Mount Schiavano Jane Doe, identified as Beverly Lynn England. Beverly was married to a teacher and had 2 small children. She was a member of a local Baptist church in Salida, Colorado. It sounds like a normal, average family life, but she had a secret that would be her undoing. She was having an affair with an unidentified man whose wife was pregnant. The wife had discovered the affair and she was understandably angry. June 12, 1980, she confided in her friend that she was going to meet her boyfriend's wife at Riverside Park in Salida. As a result, her friend agreed to watch the kids, 5 and 8. It was the last time they ever saw their mother. Beverly's husband, Dale, picked up the kids from the babysitter after she called him to say that Beverly didn't return. It's unclear how much the friend told him, but he went to look for his wife. Her car was found abandoned a few hundred feet from the Arkansas River. Her shoes and purse were found inside, but she was completely missing. Beverly's friend would admit to the police that Bev was having an affair and that she had gone to meet with the woman. It also turns out her friend knew who the woman was. That evening, the police would arrive at the woman's house to question her. The boyfriend and the wife's name has never been released publicly. The wife refused to say where Beverly was, but the police noted that she was covered in scratches, suggesting there was a fight. In fact, the pregnant woman's injuries were so bad, she had to be flown to the Denver Medical Center by helicopter the next morning. The police were open that the case was suspicious, but without a body or a crime scene, their hands were tied. They said that they had always believed there was foul play, and they felt there was no way that she abandoned her children. A lot of man-hours were spent on the river, believing her body was inside somewhere. The pregnant woman at the middle of this moved out of town. There's no information on what happened to the husband who was having the affair. As for Beverly's husband, Dale England, he was cleared. He had a solid alibi. The boyfriend and the wife are still considered persons of interest. Unbeknownst to the father and Beverly's children, she had been found in 1992. Beverly wasn't in the river. She had been located on the side of Mount Schiavano, about 10 miles northwest of Salida, in 1992. This is about 10 miles away from Riverside Park, where she was last seen. An anthropologist was called in and incorrectly declared that the bones were many decades old. As a result, no connection was made to Beverly. The bones were put in storage and essentially forgotten for 30 years, until 2015, when the bones were spotted in a storage bin in a college in Colorado Springs. DNA was extracted and finally linked to the England's children. A person can't help but wonder if other victims are lying forgotten in storage at other colleges. It's incredible that Beverly ended up there to be forgotten. According to the sheriff, the identification of Beverly's remains has allowed them to reopen the investigation, and they're working on it. They would not identify the boyfriend or the wife. Anyone with any information that could help solve this case is asked to call the Salida Police Department. Beverly England was a missing person for 35 years. She went unidentified for 23. Jack in the Box, also known as the Grand Haven John Doe, identified as Roberto Carabello. The man formerly referred to as Jack in the Box, or simply Jack, was a man found in Grand Haven, Michigan in 2002. He was found inside of a footlocker, and his remains had been burned, and he had been disposed of in a blueberry patch in Grand Haven. It was clear it would have taken 2 or more people to have carried the chest to where it was found, but little more is known. It was determined that he'd been beaten to death. His case quickly went cold and stayed that way until a tip was called in 2015. The break coming after someone saw coverage online about the case of a John Doe dubbed Jack. This tip thankfully led to Roberto being identified after 13 years. That, however, is only part of the story. It turns out this all happened because one woman was unhappy in her marriage. Roberto had been transported nearly 100 miles from home. The police announced in November 2018 that charges had been filed against his wife, McCallum, her daughter, Deneen DeCharme, who was 38, Her oldest daughter's husband or boyfriend, Christopher McMillan, 40, of Grand Rapids, Michigan. The three were charged with conspiracy, mutilation of a body, and disinterment. However, Beverly McCallum had already fled the country. It took 18 years before Beverly would finally be held accountable. But Italian police apprehended the 59-year-old woman in 2020 after she and her teenage son checked into a hotel in the Italian capital last year. It turns out she had moved to Texas shortly after the murder, meeting a man from Pakistan, and moved there, possibly also to avoid prosecution. They couldn't arrest her in Pakistan, but she got cocky and she moved to Rome. As luck would have it, the Rome police regularly run background checks on foreigners who check into the hotels there. They also have an extradition treaty. Because the kids directly affected by her murder are adults now, Mother of the Year must have gone on to have another child. A child that, because of her, would end up in child services in Italy. It didn't take long for McMillan to make a plea on the case, rolling over on the two women. The story he told was chilling. It wasn't a crime of passion or desperation to stop abuse. It was nothing like that, but rather a calculated plan to get out of a marriage without having a divorce. Even worse, she included her firstborn child in the plan. The three eventually attempted a test run. McMillan would go on to allege that McCallum was a primary planner in the demise of her husband. Both she and McMillan bludgeoned him with a hammer after pushing her husband down the stairs. Shockingly, however, it didn't end his life, so she ended up suffocating him in the end. It would come out that the entire reason for this brutal murder is that the mother said she was unhappy in her marriage. The kids who were then in the home were 9 and 11. They did hear a commotion downstairs, but they didn't know what happened. Mother of the Year even chose to take 9 and 11-year-old children to the blueberry field to drop off their father's body. So in the end, she devastated the lives of 4 children. Christopher McMillan was sentenced to 15 to 37 years. The other 2 are still awaiting trial. Roberto Carabello went unidentified for 13 years. That's it for today. Thanks, everybody. Take care of yourselves and each other.